Today we're going to be discussing integers. So, what exactly are integers? Integers is just another name for a type of number, and the type of number that we're talking about are signed whole numbers. Okay, signed whole numbers. And what I mean by that is those signs are positives and negatives. Okay, so in other words, integers are positive and negative whole numbers. All right, now what do those positive and negative whole numbers look like? How do we write them? In math, because math is a language, while learning it, you also have to learn what those things look like. So when you read it, you know how to read it, write it, and do it. Okay, and use it, right? Because math is also a verb, it's something that you do. So positive numbers could be positive 8 or 9 or 11 or 100 or I don't know, 207. And we can put positive signs in front of some of these because there's two different ways to write or read a positive number. It's either with no sign in front of it or an addition symbol. Okay, so what about negative numbers? Well, you already see the little note here. It says there's only one way to represent a negative number, and that's with a minus sign in front of it. So -6, -9, -27, okay, -112. All right, so negative, a number that is negative will only and always have a minus sign. So if you say something's negative, you put in a minus sign in front of that thing, okay, that term, that number. All right, now what is a negative number? What does it mean or represent? Well, one way or one thing that a negative means, it represents the opposite of. So for example, the opposite of 5 or the opposite of positive 5 is -5. Okay, what about if another way or something else that negative means is less than? So when you see the sentence 4 less than 18 is 14, that 4 is really negative. Okay, that 4 represents a negative number, and I would just put 18 minus 4 equals 14 because that's what that says. Okay, 4 less than is the -4. All right, you may have thought about it as subtraction prior to this, but from here on out it's either positives or negatives. So even when you're thinking about adding and subtracting, you're really adding positives or you're adding negatives. Okay, what else could it mean? Well, the negative represents the opposite of something. So for example, we could be talking about sea level. The opposite of above sea level is below sea level. So if you refer to a number something that's below sea level, you would be using a negative number. So for example, I could say -100 feet, right? The opposite of that would just be positive 100 feet above sea level versus below sea level. All right, well, if we're talking about money, what do people usually do with money? What do they want to, when they get it, most of the time, well, there's two things people do. Either they keep it in their bank account or put it in their bank account, or they use it, or they take it out of their bank account. So keeping it or putting it in the bank, that word is deposit. So you could deposit money, okay? But the opposite of depositing money is withdrawing money or withdrawal. So withdraw money. All right, so if I deposit money, I would be putting money in my bank account, which means I would be adding to the money that I already have. But if I withdraw money, that means I'm taking it out. I'm going to make it less than what I already had. Okay? if we're talking about a coordinate plane, all right, or a number line. Let's start there. If we're talking about a number line, well, on the number line, when you move to the right, that represents a positive movement, but the opposite of going to the right or units to the right. Let's write it that way. Units to the right. The opposite of units to the right would be units to the left. Okay. So if I'm units to the right would mean I would be doing positive a number. Let's say +3. Well, the opposite of moving 3 units to the right would be 3 units to the left, which would be then represent. You would use a -3 to represent that movement. There's other types of movement when you're talking about other types of number lines. You could also have, because typically when we talk about a number line, we're thinking about left to right, but we have other number lines in math that go from top to bottom or up and down. So if I say move units up is a positive thing on a number line, right? Well, the opposite of that is moving units down. So if you move so many units down, that would be a negative number or a negative value. Since we've already kind of started talking about integers on the number line, we want to go ahead and continue with that as part of the discussion. And there are various ways to display integers on a number line. One way to display +4 or 4 is with just placing a dot right there. So here's +4. I put a dot there. That's one way they could use a number line to display numbers. Another way a number line is used to display numbers is by using an arrow. But you would have to use an arrow that starts at 0 and ends up at that number, or stops at that number, such as that. So that's another way you may see information about positive and negatives being displayed on a number line. Okay, let's take a look if I was displaying a negative number. So if I was doing a negative number, remember first we could just draw an arrow from 0 to that number to represent -9, or moving to the left, because like we discussed before, moving to the left is a negative or the opposite of going to the right. Okay, or we could simply just place a dot right there or a point on -9. Okay, now these type of number lines we would call those horizontal number lines, okay, because they move from left to right. But we also have another type of number line which we call vertical number lines. Okay, so let's say what +6 looked like on this first vertical number line. We could just put a dot there, right? For -4, if I wanted to, I could draw an arrow between, not starting at -1, but starting at 0 and going down to -4. That would be another way to display it. And if I wanted to display +2, I could start at 0 and once again draw an arrow to +2. I could do that. Okay, but these are different ways that you may see integers displayed on number lines.